Howdy, y'all. I'm Upbeat. Nice to meet you if you've never been here before, and welcome in again if you have. I have a survival challenge world called Starting Small that has 20 starter bases and is still growing. This challenge world has rules that lock me into a specific biome to create my starter base. And as soon as I feel the starter base is complete, I reset and start all over again in a new biome. This has resulted in 20 unique starter bases in 20 different biomes. Creating something new each time has been the result of 5 themes that have inspired me. I'm going to break these down, show you the builds that came from them, and hopefully you can use these to inspire you to build something besides a dirt hut to live out of. First, we're going to start with the Mimic. This one is pretty standard in getting ideas for what to build. So you think of an architectural style or a thing that you want to mimic in the game, and then you Google or Pinterest images and scroll for hours. Beware. You can really scroll for hours trying to find the perfect thing. But don't be afraid to mash multiple samples into a single build. I have 2 examples of this in Starting Small. The Dark Oak Forest, I specifically wanted to build an A-frame cabin. Of course, when I was Googling pictures of that, I got giant cabins that there's no way it could be even slightly considered a starter build. So I scaled it down. Then in the Cherry Grove, I really wanted to build a cauldron. It was around Halloween time. I just didn't want to build a Barbie house in the Cherry Grove. So I went with a cauldron, went down, got some deep slate, and built a cauldron. This one I had to rework a lot. I was going off of pictures just of cauldrons on Google Images, and it was a bit of a struggle. I rebuilt it twice. Another theme that I've had throughout these builds are stories that others have told. Thinking about movies, stories, books you've read, what were the environments around the characters, what things stood out to you, what things did you like. I have 3 examples of this in my Starting Small world. First, the Old Growth Pine. This was the very first build that I did on Starting Small. It wound up Hobbit-ish. Honestly, that was partly out of necessity so that I could survive the evening. I said, well, we're going to dig into the side like a hobbit. So that's what we did. In the jungle, my inspiration was Tarzan. I feel like this one stands out as Tarzan. And my favorite part about this build is actually the hammock. I love the hammock in the middle there. Next, in the Snowy Plains, Hansel and Gretel was my big inspiration. I even went out and watched a really bad interpretation of the story, and it was a bad movie. It was bad, but it did help me translate some of the elements of the story into Minecraft. It helped me tell that story with the things that are available in the Minecraft world. I feel like this next theme is the place where I get most attached to my builds, and that is the stories that you have or create. So these are stories that I either are stories from my life, or they're stories that I make up while I'm developing the build. In the Lush Cave, I had a build that I would probably name the Lonely Man. And I had started this build, and I had in my mind this married couple that had moved down here so full of hope and excitement. And then she was gone for whatever reason. And all that was left is the lonely man. And the house had started to degrade and fall apart. And it was kind of a representation for the loneliness of this man. And that one still hits hard. Yeah. The desert biome, that one I would probably name it the Rancher. So when I was little, I really wanted to have a horse ranch, and I realized that there are 0 horses on this ranch. But that is what inspired me to build this little ranch house with this interesting roof that took me a little bit of struggles to get just right. Next, I went to the Frozen Peaks. This one was the story of the angler. I love fishing in real life, in games. I love fishing. It is a joy, a passion of mine. It just so happened that in the Frozen Peaks, fishing is basically the only easy way to get food. Exception of getting lucky with a potato or carrot from a zombie. And that didn't happen. Got very unlucky. So fishing and a fishing cabin is what came out of that. Next, in the mangrove swamp, this one I would call the gamer. When I was young, I played a lot of Banjo-Kazooie. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. I loved the music, the characters, the environments, all of it. And this game is probably the game that really made me get a love for gaming. So this one was important for me. Next up, the Pale Garden. While I was building this one, I had this idea, a vague idea of the princess tower. And as I kept building it, as I kept finding blocks, as it got taller and taller, I kept building this story of this princess. And then I found resin blocks. I got some resin from Creakings and made them into blocks. And then the story developed even more. And it became this princess who found these blocks and prized them above everything else. And it slowly absorbed all of the color and life around the tower. And it was just beautiful because it's surrounded by other very colorful, bright biomes like the jungle, the dark forest, a river. So that one still gives me goosebumps. For the next theme, have you ever had that moment where you're boating around your new world? You already have a base started somewhere near spawn, and you have that moment where you see a spot that makes you stop and reconsider all of your choices in your world up to that point? Yeah, I've had that too. So that is what world generation, what this theme is all about. So using the way that the world generates can inspire you to make something truly unique. This first example really highlights it well. The Windswept Savannah. I made a keyhole bird cage with a bird on a mountain that was just visible through another hole in another mountain. And this is a truly unique build because of the way that the world generated. I saw this keyhole and I said, I have to build a hanging base there. And it developed from there. In the Badlands, it's a beautiful biome full of so many colors. I went up to the top of this plateau and it was just 360 views. So I made a round build so that I could take advantage of those views from every point on the top floor. In the plains, there was a pillager outpost. That inspired me to build a fort to fend off the pillager hordes coming over. And then there was the Windswept Hills. When I got there, there was this valley with this crescent cliff started, and I knew in that moment that I needed to create little hovels, and it was pretty close to the sort of Hobbit-ish build that I made, but the inspiration for this one was very different with the world generation. This next theme, biome and blocks available. This one's really about exploration. Going out, getting blocks from around your area where you want to build, working with pallets, laying out blocks, and don't forget to use those unconventional blocks too. I forget that a lot. So this example, the swamp, I made an alligator farm. That's not a huge leap, right? The biome, it inspired me to make an alligator farm. At the beach, I made a sandcastle. In the flower forest, I made a flower farm. In the nether, I did something a little bit different. I used juxtaposition. I went into the biome, looked at it, and said, okay, this landscape looks completely opposite from suburbia. So I built a suburban house. Then in the war motion, I found, blocks available. I found bamboo in a sunken ship. And when you find bamboo, you build tiki. I didn't have a choice. I thought I would only have access to the wood that you find in the shipwrecks. So spruce, oak, maybe some birch. But finding that bamboo really sealed the deal on tiki. Then in the old growth birch forest, this one was very unique. I found a trail ruin dig site. and I dug every single block out of it. It was a lot. It was a lot of blocks. And that inspired the build that I made. I wound up with a cottage that was partly birch, partly terracotta. There was lots of colored glass. It was gorgeous. It wound up so much prettier. I struggle with using birch in builds, but because of that trail ruin, it elevated my build so much. It inspired me to even make a new roof type that I had never really worked with before. So there's the 5 themes that have inspired my starter build world. I hope that these help you create something and set you up to have less panic when you have a blank slate in front of you when you're starting a new build. If you want to follow along with the Starting Small Challenge world, subbing is the easiest way to get updates. Thank you all so much for watching, subbing, liking, hyping, commenting, and a huge thanks to the Upbeat members. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next Starting Small. Bye-bye. Ta-ta. Bye. Bye.